the shareholder committee meeting on the 28th of March at 4:30. We've got quite a chunky agenda. Councillor de Gaulle and myself have discussed the agenda, and we've also discussed some of the items with the people that are presenting. We don't believe we need to go into private session. If, when we are having discussions, we get near to any areas that are financially sensitive, we will go into private session. But looking at the papers and reading them and the questions we've got, I don't think we need to edge into that area, which should make it better for everybody to look at.
So just for clarity on item 3, I'm happy to agree to excluding the press and public if we need to, to do so. Is that right?
Perfect. Okay, so let's start off with declarations of interest. I don't have any.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, so minutes. I've seen the minutes and read them, and I can approve them. Are you happy to approve them, Andy?
Happy to approve. Yeah,
happy to approve. Okay, if we need to exclude, we will, but I'm hoping that we don't have to. There is no public participation, so that leads us into Veritau. If Veritau wish to come to the table and talk us through your papers. Many thanks, Max.
Thank you. So I'll just give a quick summary. So we've had a good year, both financially and in terms of performance. We've managed to increase our total fees by about 7%. We've improved our gross margins, and we are in line to exceed the target profit figure for the year. So in terms of our financial position, it's strong and sustainable. In terms of performance, we have continued to seek opportunities to expand the business, and in doing so, we've taken on a number of new clients, and we've been quite successful in bidding for work in a competitive arena. So again, we've managed to sort of expand the business through that route. We've introduced new hybrid working arrangements, so the staff are all able to pretty much choose where and when they work, providing it supports the delivery of services to our clients. And we are also continuing to invest in new systems. So the main system we're currently implementing is a new fraud case management system, and that's really designed to support the delivery of the work by the counter-fraud team within the business. So this year has been reasonably good. I think next year is going to be a bit more challenging. I think probably in line with most businesses, we are facing cost pressures. That's both pay and overheads, and it is difficult for us to pass on those increases to our member councils and other clients. So we do expect next year will be more challenging, and margins are likely to be squeezed as a result. Having said that, we have got a strong, we are in a strong position. We've got good reserves, so we can, if necessary, draw down some of those reserves to cover the increasing costs that we're facing. But clearly, that's in the long term. We need to be in a position where we're covering our costs. The other challenge for us, I think, is obviously going to be local government reorganisation. We are going to lose 5 of our member councils as a result, and one of our group companies will effectively cease to have a purpose. So we have got a plan in place which is intended to sort of manage that process, and the plan is effectively post April 2023 is to wind that group company up. We are providing a lot of support to our member councils through the LGR process, and that support has been welcomed. But in terms of the businesses, in overall terms, we don't see LGR as being a risk, but it's clearly going to be a
Okay, yeah, many thanks for that. And did you have any questions?
Yeah, just one, as you mentioned about obviously the reorganisation of North Yorkshire will impact on the scale of the work, although I would imagine that there's a transitional year, but presumably you'll still be involved in work at that stage. And the other question I had was that as a tech-oil company, the majority of the work has to be with a local authority. I wasn't entirely clear, is that with us as a local authority or local authorities in general?
In terms of LGR, in the short to medium term, we do not anticipate a significant reduction in the level of service that we provide to the new North Yorkshire Council. Clearly, in the long term, there's every likelihood that the council will look to streamline and rationalise how it works, and therefore I think it's inevitable there will be some reduction. Having said that, we are in the, I suppose, fortunate position of not actually providing services to all the existing councils. So there's an element of slack there that we obviously take advantage of. So I think our projections are that for the next probably 3 or 4 years, we don't see any particular risk to the level of service that we're required to deliver. The second question about TECL, it is to our member councils. That is, that's the 80% denominator that we have to consider. Within that, we do count things like council maintained schools. That's part of that calculation. But no, we can't count work for other councils, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Max, many thanks for that. And I know that we've had some conversations about the contents of your report. So one of the things that I find really impressive is how you've kept the costs down. So you've passed on minimum costs, which is why next year it is going to be a much more challenging year. We've seen, you know, the accounts were set in December and we're now looking at 8% inflation. Goodness knows where the energy charges are going to go, and goodness knows getting people in right the way across the board is proving challenging. What plans have you got in place to deliver that? I mean, you talk about your training and how do you manage to maintain that going forward?
Yes. So we've faced these sorts of challenges for a number of years. Our pay rates are not as competitive as they could be, but there's a cost implication. We can't just increase the pay for our staff. So we have, for a number of years, operated effectively a graduate trainee scheme. So we try and grow our own staff, and that's proved reasonably successful. The difficulty for us is as people train and qualify, they then get poached, and that's been an ongoing challenge. We will just carry on. That's the way we mitigate this risk, but it remains a bit of a headache, and it may well become more of a headache.
Okay, I don't have any further questions, Andy. Many thanks.
Okay.
So if I could ask Yorwaste to come to the table, please. Afternoon. Yeah, you have to press the green button or the button that turns. Yeah, the one that says mine.
Now it's green.
So if you want to give a brief introduction or summary of your papers, and then I know we again have got some questions for you.
So we start off with how Yorwaste delivers shareholder value. It's a boilerplate one. It doesn't change. It's not an error. I think it's important to keep reiterating that there's three ways that we bring our benefit. One is directly in terms of how we provide the service in a cost-effective manner and produce returns in terms of profits. One is indirectly in terms of maximising the client's investment in Allerton Park and making sure that it gets its maximum revenues through there by maximising its volume commitments. And then there's intangibly in terms of all of the other nice things we do for both local authorities. Sometimes we charge, quite often you get it for free because that's what we're here for, is to sort of drive that shareholder value. In terms of the annual reports, I'll put a copy in there. Is there any questions on those? I mean, they are a year old now, so we're probably moving into ancient history, especially given what's happened over the past year. I'm happy to take any questions on the annual report.
I don't have a lot of questions on the financial reports. I did have some questions on the health and safety area.
Sure, yeah. In terms of health and safety, so I think we've done very well in terms of the last few years. We've sort of gone up the ROSPA ladder, and we're now at ROSPA Gold. We've got ISO 45001. We've had a couple of incidents over the last, I think it was November, we had a couple of RIDORs. Now, RIDORs is basically when somebody's been either had something incredibly serious happen or has been off work for 7 days due to an injury. Quite often, sort of, we do everything we can, but you can't account for every element of human behaviour. So if I was to give you an example of the two without mentioning any names, somebody took a shortcut across a very steep grass bank whilst it was wet, even though there was a path shortly to the side of it, slipped down the grass bank and broke his leg. Another person was dismounting from an HGV vehicle, didn't maintain 3 points of contact, slipped, twisted his ankle. And both of those instances, people were off for more than 7 days. The training had been provided, there was records of the training, we had provided all the sort of safety awareness, and so there's only so much you can do, but unfortunately accidents will still happen, and we just need to continue to try and raise the bar.
But you have done more since then as well. So
we have, yeah. So I've done in fact, all senior management have done the NEBOSH Health and Safety Leadership Excellence course and passed it. So we've all got our certificates. We've also done some external consultancy who've come in and reviewed our processes, and we've used them to upskill our frontline managers, frontline supervisors, to give them some more time. There was a few select operational roles where we gave them one-to-one coaching on the job. So somebody outside could come in, they're less threatening, they're there as a sort of, helpful coach, and then they can walk around and identify things that they should be spotting. So we've been doing that kind of exercise, and we are targeting to go for our sort of HS, British Safety Council 5-star audit later this year. So, any other questions on health and safety?
So not on health and safety, but Andy's got a question for you.
Yes, it was interesting to see the progress that's been made on the environment and climate change. You reference ISO 5001 certification, and you also mentioned about the HGVs and reviews about different technology. I wondered if, I know you mentioned about the limitations of EV for bigger vehicles. I just wondered if any work had been done to look at alternatives such as LPG or hydrogen.
Certainly hydrogen is probably our current expectation of where we might end up. I think sort of City of York have had some interesting experiences with their electric RCVs, which probably would be inappropriate for me to sort of make comment because I don't have the details on it. Having said that, sort of technology is moving on all along. If you look at if you were going down to the hydrogen route, one of your issues there is needing the network to be able to go and get filled up, because whilst it will give you the torque to get up the hills like Sutton Bank, you also need to be able to refuel as you go along. So it's one of these chicken and egg infrastructure things, and we need bigger companies and bigger authorities to encourage the implementation of a network so that we can then piggyback on it. But unfortunately, we're not big enough to pick up the phone to BP and tell them to start putting out hydrogen stations. In terms of what we can do, though, there's about 1.2 million litres of diesel that we use. With the abolition of the red diesel duty-free element. You know what I mean? That's put a substantial increase in that cost. So one of the things we can do there is there's certain pieces of kit, specifically on the compost pad, where we can look to electrify it. So we can convert it from being a diesel engine over to an electric engine, which actually makes it easier to run, makes it a lot more efficient. One of the challenges you've got there is the infrastructure and on site and having enough power. But that's one of the things that we're looking at as a medium-term solution, not something over the next year.
That's static equipment rather than
static equipment,
vehicles.
correct? Yeah.
So, thank you. That's helpful.
So just building on that, within your report, we were talking about the different reductions in emissions and how the reduction in emissions is tied to how much tonnage you get through, but there is other stuff that you can do. So could you just say a little bit more about what else you're looking at doing inside the plant?
So let's chunk it up into the three areas. In terms of the vehicles, I think sort of where we've got smaller vehicles like the supervisor vans, we can potentially look to make them electric, even though we've still got such a large footprint that would need to be accommodated by putting out a little network of our own across our sites, which has a cost, but might be something that we look at. In terms of the actual vehicles, I think they're all, forgive me, Eurocat 6, Eurocat 7. All the new plant that we get will be the latest sort of environmentally friendly. So the equipment that we are using and the equipment that we replace it with are all better and more environmentally friendly than the ones that we are retiring. The next challenge that we've got then is, as I said, the electrification of plant on the thing, but there's also the electricity that we use in our buildings. So we are probably about 80% LED lights. There's a few sort of sodium lights that need to be upgraded. That's going to be in the budget for this year. Where we've got various buildings, we've got some very, very old double glazing, which is possibly almost older than me in some cases, which has ceased being sort of energy efficient. And one of the things we need to do there is to make those buildings and those offices more energy efficient from nice simple things like insulation. So that's the plan for the current year. We don't have any big bang solutions because I think the biggest footprint that we've got are the vehicles, which need either a better technology or a better network to fill them up with. Oh, and then there's always the green energy park, which
we're talking about. So, you know, and I'm assuming that'll come through at the next update.
Certainly can, yeah. It would probably be a little bit unfair to sort of talk in more detail
Absolutely,
about it
not
before
now.
the shareholders have had an opportunity to see it. So,
yeah.
But it has some promising opportunities, and I'm sure it will provoke interesting discussions about wind as well.
It will do. It definitely will do. And there's just one final thing I'd like to say, unless you've got anything else, Andy, is the management of your costs this year have been phenomenal. And I know that there's been a lot going on with the pandemic and areas that you could or could not go into. But can I just thank you as the shareholder for actually managing those costs to such a level that you've kept the profitability going, but more importantly, you've kept the business running and running superbly well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is Councillor Kilbane? Okay, I was told you weren't allowed to speak, which is why I didn't introduce you. That was my guidance at the start, Pete, so apologies.
Sorry, my microphone doesn't work, but...
So apologies, Pete.
Chair, Councillor Kilbane is entitled to be here as representative of the main opposition group. He is entitled to contribute, ask questions, he's just not allowed to vote.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, but my microphone doesn't work, I'm sorry.
Apologies, that isn't the information I was given at the start, Pete, so...
It's always hit and miss, Councillor Widdowson, whether I'm allowed to speak or not. It changes from meeting to meeting. Thanks for the report, Sandy. Can I just ask if can give us any more information on point 4 of your strategic priorities for business, new business plans? So development of a business case for upgrading Harewood to meet shareholder needs under the new resources and waste strategy recycled policy.
So you'll know from your visit that we had a good year specifically for the City of York and recycling this year. And I think sort of it works well with City of York recycling. As we move towards the wider sort of unitary in North Yorkshire, there's a number of different collection methods. There will be standardisation as part of the resource and waste strategy onto a single collection method. The question then is, where's the best opportunity to do that? And as we discussed, one of the challenges you've got is you can put the big scale investment, tens of millions of pounds to meet the requirement, but what we don't know is what's going to happen to that requirement. So with extended producer responsibility, you could find people moving away from plastic. There's also an argument to sort of say that because plastic, glass and metal are going to be charged at the same rate, you might find them moving towards plastic because it's a lot lighter in terms of being able to maneuver. So what you don't want to do is to go and spend tens of millions of pounds on a new plant and then find that you're not going to be processing very much plastic in 5 years, 10 years time. And that's the sort of timescales we need to be thinking at, because we're probably 2 or 3 years before we actually get our conclusion on resource and waste strategy. So what we've identified is we could probably increase the throughput at Harewood Wind without too much additional investment. And certainly it would be a digestible investment that would allow both shareholders to use that site for a sort of short to medium term. One of the questions there is what do you want to recycle, which is always one of the key things. The more that you recycle, the additional costs that you've got. So we talked about things like plastic cups and trays, right? There's a lot of desire for people to do that. It's actually a relatively small volume, but it also doesn't get much in terms of recyclate value. So everything's there, and it comes down to a cost, but also a qualitative element. And whilst we can give you prices for what you need, and we're working with the waste team to do that, there need to be some qualitative guidance from the councillors and from the interested parties and stakeholders as to what it is they want to see being recycled in the future. Bearing in mind that it could all change in the next 5 years as well.
Just for clarity, really. So there's the possibility, depending on how the markets go, to recycle more at Harewood Wind, and of course the advantage for that is that we would burn less fuel moving it the distance to Allerton. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm just building on that, Councillor Kilbane. The environmental legislation that's going through is being tugged one way and the other, so nobody has actually got a distinct opinion on where it's going to go, and nor will they have for 2, 3, and I would say more like 4 years. So we need to be mindful of it. Yeah.
I'm just a little bit sceptical about it being delivered within the current term. So.
Yeah, agreed. And that affects everything from the we recyclates all the way through. I don't have any further questions, Andy. No. Councillor Kilbane, any more questions? No? Okay. Many thanks, Andy. Okay. Just making sure.
Is that me now?
Yeah, you're done. So Simon from YPO, please. Okay, we've seen the format.
Yep, indeed. Afternoon, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. So start off with the financial performance update, and attached to the papers is the last published and therefore publicly available set of accounts, and that we are always kind of transparent and publish those accounts. We have a calendar financial year, and therefore they relate to, it feels like a long time ago now, 2020. And you'll see that actually they reflect the impact of, you know, the major impact of COVID, which closed schools as our major income generator for a significant part of that year. We took a financial loss on the procurement of PPE on behalf of the public sector. But of course, we maintained our costs all the way through. So that kind of triple whammy actually is reflected in the accounts. 2021, we said, was going to be a year of recovery. So we actually put back our planned new 3-year strategy to this year. We said, let's have a hiatus year, essentially, get back on track, get back to trading from, you know, the shareholder point of view, from York City Council point of view, make sure that we were making a surplus and distributing a dividend back to our member authorities. And although the first quarter of that year again was hit by a further lockdown, which none of us expected, we've still really ticked the box. I'm very pleased to be able to say. So 2021 has been a year of recovery. We have got back into profitability. The accounts are still being audited and therefore have not been approved by our own member authorities, and therefore with due regard to governance, I have to say that there is an indicative figure at this point, but I'm happy to share that, and it's in the paper. that we're looking to produce a figure of 3.7 million, which we're really pleased with actually as a bounce back year. And again, the important thing is we intend to recommend paying a dividend to our members based on that performance. So York as a shareholder will be getting a share of that. So we're back on track to the normal kind of financial performance that you will be used to. The budget for this current trading year has been established based on 2019 trading levels, which would produce a surplus of 7 million. And at the end of the first quarter, bear in mind, again, the calendar financial year, we're on track, actually. So both costs and income are on track with the budget that we've produced. Would you like me to move on to the questions that you had, particularly on the financials, or shall I go through the rest? What would you? Yeah.
If you want to move on to those, yes.
Yes, so I think you had three specific questions relating to the financial performance. So pensions, the liability has gone up significantly in the last published accounts. Is that a problem? Yes and no, but mainly no. So pension liability is it's a theoretical technical calculation based on the number of people that either are or will in the future receive a pension. We're members of the West Yorkshire Pension Fund, so it's a very well-performing pension fund, actually. Even within the local government sphere, it's very strong, and therefore the risks are spread across all of the members. It never becomes a problem unless you're trying to sell or wind up the business. So what the figure represents is the totality of everybody that is either now or in the future entitled to a pension. Of course, you only pay that out as they come up to retirement, or in some unfortunate cases they never get there. And mortality calculations is one of the inputs into the pension liability. So in our case, are we likely to be wound up or sold? And is that pension liability likely to crystallize? No, that is very, very unlikely. And in any case, as I say, the risk could be spread across all of the members in any case. The one financial risk, I suppose, that is theoretically there is that if everybody's liability increases due to the actuarial calculations, then our pension contributions into the scheme would have to go up. So there would be kind of an in-year P&L hit on our pension contributions. But that is manageable, and that goes up and down every year anyway. So the summary of that is no, I don't think we should be worried about it.
All I'm delighted to hear is that you've got all the thoughts about it and you have it under control. That was was my reason for asking these types of questions.
Sure, absolutely. I think the year-end forecast I've touched on, which is we're aiming at the 7 million so far. Quarter of the way through, we're on track. 8% inflation, is that likely to be a challenge to us? Yes, I mean, it's a challenge to any business. I think a number of trends have helped us. So the move to digitalization, the move to online trading, the gradual move away from a fixed price annual catalogue, which means you can adjust customer pricing more in real time, is obviously much more helpful in this environment when prices are going up. Which means that input prices are going up, but we're able to pass many of those on to the customer. Because we started experiencing this a couple of years ago, for many of the categories in the catalogue, we already actually don't put a price and say refer to website for current pricing. And that has been a trend that's, as I say, a couple of years in now. So our ability to cope with it is much greater as I sit here now than it was if you'd asked the question 2 years ago. Of course, we will try to do as good a buying job as we can. That's fundamentally what we are. We're a buying consortium that bands together volume to try and get the best price in the marketplace by wielding a bigger stick, frankly. And we're under a lot of pressure to go back to our roots and do the best buying job that we can on behalf of local authorities and our customers, who are schools and local councils. There is always an opportunity in these situations, of course, because a time of rising prices means that more customers tend to shop around and check prices and do comparisons. And we're confident that we are very competitive. Is one of our key key parts of our proposition is price leadership, and we do a lot of benchmarking ourselves to make sure that we stay at that competitive end of the market. So in a time when more people are maybe getting squeezed, shopping around, it creates an opportunity for the more competitive end of the market, and we think that's us. So always a silver lining, I think.
Excellent, many thanks. Councillor Dawn.
Yes, welcome the information in looking at your update report, paragraph 3, about climate emergency, and obviously quite topical at the moment, the reference to electricity and gas contracts, and the fact that you're trialling more electric vehicles in Wakefield, which is a good sign. And just sort of drawing that alongside the paragraph 5.1, which refers to procurement policies and your compliance with an ethical procurement policy. Just wondering the current circumstances. Is there some work looking at, you know, what Russian contracts we have and how we're responding to the Ukraine situation?
There is indeed, and this is another good news / silver lining story, really. So there is no exposure to Gazprom particularly, and Russian-owned assets.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our procurement is governed actually by a steering committee. So we have what we call an energy industry steering group, which has representatives from all of our customers, about 70 local authorities.
Mm-hmm.
And they determine a couple of things. The ethical procurement policy is certainly one of them, but also the risk profile as well. So how much do we forward buy so that councils have the kind of assurance of fixed pricing, and how much do we leave to go on spot pricing so that you can take advantage of markets going up and down? And typically that's kind of 80-20. At the moment, they have advised us to dial that back a bit and go to more of a kind of 70-30 split, because we think at the moment, just at the point that we're buying, the market's going to go down again. So we don't want to lock too much in at the high price at the moment. But that is a collaborative decision that is made with the customers, if you like. On the Gazprom side of things, there are councils that do find themselves a bit embarrassed at the moment with their energy procurement. So I can say this because it's in the public domain. So in the last week, Manchester City Council and Bolton City Council have exited their current contract and moved across to YPO, which has increased our overall energy procurement spend, will increase the rebate that we get on that, and therefore that will flow through into dividend for York City Council. There was also, I think, again, maybe interesting for members, that in the conversation I had with the Manchester City Council Chief Exec, the alternative, of course, was the Crown Commercial Service, offshoot of the Cabinet Office, the central government procurement body. And I basically said, would you like a central government policy solution, or would you like it to come back to the North of England and to North of England councils and actually tick the levelling up agenda box, which was a bit of a no-brainer. So again, one of the offshoots from what has happened is an opportunity for us to reinforce the levelling up agenda and keep that money circulating in North of England local government.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Cobain, any questions? Nope. Simon, can I just...
Sorry, I've also got health and safety and procurement. Did you want me to touch on those? Yeah. So health and safety, again, is very much a collaborative activity, jointly chaired by myself and the Unison Trades Union Branch Secretary. And we set the policy, we monitor it on a monthly basis. We're very hot on reporting near misses, which is the opportunity for continuous improvement. So those things that don't quite become an accident, but could do if we're not aware of them. So doing it together with the trade union has benefits, because they have a bit more clout and a bit more credibility on the shop floor, particularly in the warehouse. So a joint message going out from both of us always has much more effect, and that's worked really well. From a governance point of view, we have oversight from Wakefield as lead authority, from their health and safety professionals, and their internal audit function also audits health and safety compliance on a regular basis, as well as part of their activity. At the moment, or historically, I should say, the health and safety manager has been a fairly junior role within the organisation, reporting into facilities manager. The departure of the current incumbent has led us to have a rethink, and we're actually re-advertising it, leapfrogging and reporting that directly into the operations director to give it more clout, frankly, to drive through continuous improvement and some of the changes that we need to make in health and safety. On procurement, as I've mentioned already, that is the heart of what we do. We are fundamentally a collaborative procurement organisation, and all of our government local government framework contracts and most of our school resources have been through procurement under public contract regulations. And that guarantee, again, of compliance and of ethical procurement is a core part of our proposition, and the reason why I think one of the reasons why we have such fantastic customer loyalty. Of course, the EU procurement regs are being rewritten at the moment, and the new UK procurement regs are likely to come into force in the first quarter of 2023. We've been very active actually in the consultation. So the Cabinet Office carried out a consultation in that. They commented that our response to the consultation was longer than the consultation document itself, actually. But they were very interested in it. They called us in for a number of follow-up meetings, and we've been actively engaged in kind of forming the future of procurement policy in the UK, which in terms of the positioning where we want to be, we're really pleased at that. We're very aware that one of our responsibilities is not just to deal with the big corporates and get the best pricing that we can nationally, but there's a bit of a tension and a balancing act to do with supporting local economies and making sure that local SMEs have access to local government contracts. What you can't do is force that. You can't skew the outcome of an independent procurement process. But what we're trying to do is encourage as many SMEs as we can to participate in that process, try and break some of the myths, get rid of some of the scariness of bidding for public sector contracts, and do a bit of hand-holding as well. So we make sure that if somebody wants to do it for the first time, we help them through the documentation. And we've been quite successful in working with local chambers of commerce, running seminars and workshops to both promote and to train local SMEs in doing that. And the final point about procurement is the Social Value Act. So, of course, all local authorities have a legal obligation to make sure that they are considering the creation of social value in all of their commercial activity. We're one of the providers of the evidence of that. So making sure that we're doing as much collection as we can, we're measuring as much as we can, and then we're publishing that back to you as authorities. It helps you meet your own obligations under the Social Value Act, because it's one of the more obvious measures of social value that you can do. It can be a bit nebulous, I think. And then the final point on apprenticeships, something I'm very proud of, to be honest. When I joined the organisation 10 years ago, we had historically had an apprenticeship scheme which had lapsed. We saw that we had an ageing workforce. I know how they feel, and so because I'm one of them. And we had a problem actually coming through in the creation and the growth of our own talent. So in 2011, we reintroduced a new apprenticeship scheme administered by Wakefield College, and we've since recruited 80 apprentices over that time. 9 of those are currently apprentices, and 71 of them have gone on to secure permanent positions within YPO, and two of those currently on fixed term. So we've got about 80% of the apprentices that have gone through stay on with us, and some of them are now in management positions. And in fact, the lady that runs our apprenticeship public sector contract is an ex-apprentice, which is a great story in its own right. So I think that is, of all of what we said, the thing I'm proudest of and the biggest good news story, really.
It is. It's a fantastic set of results. The fact that you've got through the last 2 years and it's profitable, the way that you treat your people, the seriousness with which you take health and safety is fantastic. So please keep doing it. And the results are coming through in terms of the paper.
Thank you.
One thing we might want to have a chat about at some point, and I think it was something that Andy's picked up in previous occasions, is how we tie in the ethical procurement, you know, what is behind that, so that we could do a bit of understanding in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can certainly. Would you like me to bring something like that to the next session?
Yeah, that would be really interesting to look at.
Do something specific on that, certainly.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah. Sure.
Councillor Kilbane, before I forget again, any questions? No? Many thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Chair.
So Karen, I never know whether to call you with work with York or City of York Trading. City of York Trading. Oops. So many thanks for coming this evening or this afternoon.
Okay.
Over to yourself for the summary, please.
Okay, it is a fairly short summary. The first attachment with the papers is our 2020-2021 statutory accounts, which are a bit late in the day due to some audit delays as a result of COVID, but we got there eventually. I don't know if there are any questions on those. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it was a challenging year. 2020-21, a lot of our clients were closed for big chunks of time. Those other clients were affected by COVID significantly, and our own workforce was as well. We furloughed a lot of staff during the year. But we did make a small profit, although not anywhere near what we intended to when we did the budget at the beginning. And were able to pay, or will be able to pay, a small dividend to the council. This year has been significantly different. So we've had a little bit of a COVID bounce, really. We've been providing a lot of staff to City of York to help with the COVID response. So a lot of the test and trace staff have been provided by us. Most of the staff in the lateral flow testing sites have been provided by us. And all of the COVID marshals have been provided by us, which is great, but they're all finishing this week. So in doing our budget for next year, we've had to take into account that that income won't be there any longer. What we're trying to do is retain as many of those staff as possible and move them into other areas, because we aim to try and provide as sustainable and long-term employment as we can, but on a temporary, ongoing basis in different assignments. Other than that, this year, we are above both our turnover and our profit target. The City of York Council supply, which is the work with York part of the business, is well above budget for the year. Schools are well above budget for the year, although it's particularly challenging at the moment. And our work with the Yorkshire business, which was the one that we launched right in the middle, well, right at the beginning of the pandemic, April 2020, which never really got off the ground in the way that we intended. It's starting to pick up now in 2022, and we just hopefully appointed a new person to head that up. We have had some staffing changes in the company, and one of those changes has been the resignation of one of our non-executive directors, and that's because of his additional business commitments outside of City of York Trading Limited. So we did go through an advertising and interview process last month, and the directors have recommended an appointment to yourselves, and you have seen her CV, which is the confidential attachment, I think. So one of our requests in this meeting is for you to approve that appointment, which is shareholder is in your book. In terms of the other specifics that you've asked for, climate emergency wise, we're a fairly small team. There are 17, 18 of us at any one time. Most of us have been working on a hybrid basis, partly from home and partly from the office. During the course of 2020-21, we actually gave up one of our city centre offices and reduced to one. But that means we now have to work on a rota basis in the office at all times. It is our intention in June to move to a new building in the city. That's the building we'll be leasing from City of York at the moment, and it was a derelict building until very recently. It's undergoing a programme of repair and renovation, refurbishment, There are some changes being made to that building which are more ecologically sound than our current office. So we'll have LEDs rather than very old fluorescent tubes. I think a new boiler's being installed, and also we'll be continuing to use it on a hybrid basis. So a lot of our recruitment processes have changed, I suppose, since COVID. We always used to drive to see clients. We always used to ask people to drive to see us for meetings. We're still doing many, many meetings on a remote basis and interviews on a remote basis. And with the extension of the electronic right to work check now until September on a temporary basis and then permanently after that, we expect that that will continue. So some of the IT systems that are going into the new office will allow for that to happen more easily than with a slightly dodgy connection on a laptop, which is what we sometimes have to use at the moment. The new office, as the existing office, has no staff parking, but is very close to bus routes and the station and cycling and such like. Apprenticeship-wise, we have in the past taken on apprentices in the business. They have been to do business support really at times of transition where we've been implementing new systems or bringing on new parts of the business which have needed a lot of admin input. We're not in that position at the moment, but we are looking at later in the year at certain parts of the business need to expand if the client uptake is such that if there is the capacity there in terms of existing members of staff to train them up, then we would like to use apprenticeships for that reason. We want to take on apprentice recruiters though, and there are very few providers of that. I think there are 4 across the country, so we just need to identify the right people to support us with that. On a procurement basis, we're pretty small. We procure staff and we do most of that ourselves. We have the odd pile of paper, you know, we obviously need energy and we use a green energy supplier at the moment and we'll continue to do that. So there's nothing significant in terms of procurement. And health and safety wise, I'm responsible for health and safety in the business. The biggest health and safety challenge has obviously been COVID and still is. We've implemented a kind of rota system in the office so we don't have too many people crammed into a small space. When we're in a bigger building, which has got 3 floors, there'll be a bit more room to move around. But currently we have windows open all the time. We have screens up. We're asking people to do lateral flow tests and we will be doing that going forward from April as well. We're going to be providing them with tests to do that once their free ones have run out. We have a lot of different candidates out with different clients all over the place and they follow the health and safety procedures and policies in place of individual clients. So that's part of our general introduction with each client to establish that and to pass that information on to candidates in place. Okay, I don't know if you've got any questions on any of that.
I've just going right the way back to the start, and I know it's a conversation that we've had 3 or 4 times now, so I apologise for bringing it up again, but I'm still going to do it again.
Okay.
The profit has gone up and the turnover has gone up, but that in my head is because we keep bringing people into York for short-term, into the City of York Council for short-term roles, and then they leave and they go on to other stuff, which is right, which is your business model. What would you say we could do better so that we don't have so many short-term gaps?
Why would I recommend that? I think actually you are better than you used to be.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because you have a handle on, does this really need a short-term person or does it actually need a long-term person? And if it needs a long-term person, you do that first, or you try to do that first. I think the complication is when you try to do that and it doesn't work. And then by the time we get it, it's even more urgent because you've gone down that route first. But inevitably, I think with the market as it is, some of the long-term sickness or maternity covers are really difficult to fill in specialist areas just because the pay rate that the council pays for a temporary, albeit long-term temporary role, is the council rate, and most temporary staff or interim staff are looking for more than that. So sometimes things will come to us late in the day, but I understand why that's the case. There are certain sectors, as you'll have seen from the confidential report, where we time after time provide temp staff. And I think that's always going to be the case, and that's probably the case in every local authority in the country. I don't think you're that unusual. You're also quite sensible in terms of using people for peaks and troughs, so you're not taking on a permanent workforce and then have to lay them off. You know, it's a good use of temp staff in that situation. And some of the stuff that's externally funded or is limited time, it makes sense to use temporary staff for that. So I wouldn't advise you necessarily to do anything different. I think you're doing all right.
Okay, many thanks for that. Councillor Vaughan, any other questions? Councillor Kilbane?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. How easy or difficult are you finding it to recruit staff into roles in general?
Yeah, it depends what kind of roles. We're having to do a lot more searching rather than just sticking on an advert and getting 25 applicants. So we've recently expanded our LinkedIn access to LinkedIn Recruiter. We have access to other CV search facilities and that kind of thing. So we're having to kind of target people rather than expecting them to come to us. Some roles we still get lots of applicants. Some of the very specialist roles we have to do quite a bit of work. And with regard to social workers in particular, we use a lot of second tier agencies to assist us with that because there's a national shortage of social workers. It's not as easy as it used to be.
Okay, I don't have any further questions, gentlemen. No. Karen, many thanks. But before you go, we need to formally approve your non-exec. So how do we do that?
I'm happy to
So
support the recommendation.
yeah, so sorry, yeah, I was just going to just put my hand up and remind you about that. So in terms of the existing governance arrangements between ourselves and the company, where there is an appointment for an independent non-executive director, the board of directors from City of York Trading will present their final recommendation to the committee for approval. And then once approval has been given, that will then just be taken away and will be appointed through the board of the company.
Okay, many thanks. So Sarah, for the Make It York update, please. Mind the way, do I need to move?
Yes. So I've got a loud voice, so I just wanted to just run through quickly a PowerPoint presentation, just to give a little bit of background to the business plan, if that's fine, okay with you. Okay. Okay. Right. As you're aware, I've been in place now for 4 months. I've been doing a lot of talking to people, both internally and externally, and learning about the organisation, what went well and what went wrong. What I found is there's wide support for what we do, which is really good news. We do some excellent projects and we are really valued by key partners. What we need to do better, and this has been loud and clear, and we've heard it, and hopefully through the papers that we've presented today, you can see that, is that Make It York needs to be more transparent and clear. We need to change the way we do some things because we've always done them that way. And there is a time for change. Oh, what happened then? And we need to be more proud and ambitious about what we do and what we want for York. And we also need to increase our partnership working. That's become very apparent to me. And there's a lot of support through partners who want to work with us more and participate more in what we do for the city. The plan that we have produced, I'm pleased to say it's the first external document of its type that Make It York has done. We are setting out our stall here, saying what our key priorities are. We've tried to be as clear as possible, and we have set out our values and our priorities for the next 3 years. We've clearly set the actions for 22 and 23 so people can monitor us and hold us to account for what we are doing for the city. And I think that is the first as well for what we've been able to achieve. What I have done in this business plan is put extra capacity in for our events team, our key account management, because I found that that was a little bit weak and we needed to get better at managing the public spaces, the events that we provide, our procurement processes, and also how we work with our key partners and members. So that's where some capacity has been put. We also have invested in this business plan a York welcome. In the SLA, we do not have to provide a visitor information centre in the way that we do, but we feel as a city that has 8.4 million tourists a year and residents that use our city, who use our visitor information centre, we want to give that York welcome. And therefore, even though it is a huge cost and commercially, it perhaps doesn't make sense, we will have an open visitor information centre because it is a real priority to us, our members, and I think the city and residents. 40% of people who use the visitor information centre are residents. And I think that's really important that we keep that York welcome. And many cities have closed the doors, and I don't believe that we should close the door of our visitor information centre. So we are going to work really hard to keep that York welcome, and that's a key priority for us going forward. You'll see in the business plan that the first year, the information that we have provided, we will make a small loss, and that is because we need to do more work around the loss of income through having an open visitor information centre. Things such as Christmas lights that we contribute to and various other activities. Also, where we are based at the moment is incredibly expensive, and we are looking to move to help reduce some of the costs that we incur. So the business plan is really looking at reducing cost as well as increasing income and activity. And all the income that we produce goes into the city centre. And I think that's important to stress, that we are putting back into the centre. The business plan also has a huge priority and focus for including lots of resident activity. I've heard a lot since I've been here that residents don't feel that the city is for them, it's for visitors. If we don't get it right and our events and our activities for residents, then visitors won't come anyway. So priority is for us to get residents to engage with us and participate in the activities that we do. So another priority for us going forward. And also transparency. The business plan does show clear transparency. We want to be transparent. We've heard, we've learned, we've put the processes in place. And I think you'll see that we've put a lot of processes in place in a short time. One of the key criticisms was about we didn't have a tender process. We do now have a tender process. All our events and activities will be tendered. Our scheme of delegation sets out quite clearly something we didn't have before as well. We've looked at the council scheme of delegations, other organisation schemes of delegations, and we have produced our own, which is set out clearly. We do have a 2-page summary of the scheme of delegations. I didn't see it in the papers, but I can circulate that as well, because it's like at a glance to see what responsibilities the board has, shareholders, senior executives, project managers. I just wanted to quickly go through the tender process because we've put that in place. It is live now. So people can go to our tenders website. We are very proud of this. We've learnt, we've taken advice from the council's procurement team. So we've live at the moment with our tender website. People can register so they can see when tenders become live as well. Latest tenders, we've got 2 there at the moment for people to tender the summer offer that's available. And that just shows you the information and sets out some of the detail of the tender that people can see on the website. And then there's registration there as well, so that people can be kept updated and that people can submit their tenders through an electronic process. So we've worked very, very hard on the tender process, because I know that that was mentioned last time that we were here and was a key thing. So that's all I wanted to run through today. Any questions?
I just thought I'd better get out of the way of the lovely pictures behind me. So no, that's really good progress. You can see that it is open, you can see that it is transparent. In your business plan that you've put forward, you've got quite a few measures, quite a few of the KPIs that are in there. Could you just run me through how you're going to actually keep on top of them, how you are going to measure them? Because some of them look difficult to measure, and then how you're going to report them.
Well, we haven't had KPIs before, so this is learning for the organisation. So we've put some in place. We will report to the client committee that we have through Charlie and councillors that we report to on a quarterly basis. They will be taken to our board as well. We have appointed a researcher who will keep the information. We've tendered for somebody to undertake consultation with people who attend our events. So everything that we do, we will monitor and evaluate.
Thank you for that. I've got a couple of other questions. So the markets, when you're talking about the markets, are all the city centre ones. They're not the ones in the villages. It is all city centre, isn't it?
It's all the markets within 6 2/3 of the shambles market. We are tasked with undertaking a market strategy. So we're going to have a bit of a consultation day on scoping out that strategy. It's the first that will be done for the city, and probably nationally. There are only market strategies available in London. So we're looking forward to producing that and looking at how all the markets within the 6 2/3 impact on the shambles, because the shambles are jewel in the crown. We've been awarded the best outdoor market in the UK. We want to keep it that way, and we want to look at how other markets can add value to the shambles market and also make York an interesting place for markets going forward.
I'm just going to hog this for a little bit. Building on that, in terms of your strategy, where is sustainability going to sit? I know you and I have had conversations about what the Christmas markets in Berlin do versus what our Christmas markets do. How do we move in that direction? What are your plans?
Well, throughout the business plan, sustainability is quite key. We as an organisation don't have a sustainable policy. We are looking at that, and we are seeking advice and support of how we can bring that together so that we can be more environmentally friendly, and also how we can help reduce carbon emissions in every activity that we do. Within the tenders, we are scoring people for how they can contribute to becoming more sustainable as a Christmas market. We will be saying that no single-use plastic can be used, which I know that you're keen, and we're putting that in place, and that will be put in the terms and conditions for the contracts that we do. So everywhere possible we can do. As part of the tourism strategy that we're also tasked with developing, we will be working with the hospitality sector about how we can encourage the whole of the hospitality sector to become more sustainable, more environmentally friendly going forward. So we will look at some good practice elsewhere in the world that has been undertaken, and also looking to see if we can put some best practice in York going forward as well.
Many thanks for that. I don't have any more questions.
Just a comment that last comment is very welcome music to my ears, having over a number of years raised the question about sustainable cups and receptacles, and that getting away from that single-use plastic. Very much, if we can achieve that, a win-win, reducing the sort of waste and issues like that, as well as encouraging better use of the resources. So if that's going to be something that we can develop further in events and contracts and so on, that would be very, very welcome. The only other comment I was going to make was, as you've said, the markets is very important to us. I think, given the last couple of years, they've had a pretty tough time. Certainly, we'd want to support our markets wherever possible and involve all relevant stakeholders in the city. We have York Bid, we have the Market Traders Association, we've got ward councillors. All those people need to be engaged in having a shared vision for how we take things forward, I think. So very much welcome that.
And that builds, Sarah, on your partnership work, which you spoke long and hard about on the first couple of slides. So I'm assuming you're both violently agreeing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to rush into a strategy. We want to consult. We actually want to look at what is the ambition for the markets going forward. During lockdown, we saw that the shambles market became very important to local people. We want to look at how we can harness that and grow the offering that we've got.
Councillor Kilbane.
Yeah, I've got just a few questions, Chair, if that's okay. Just on the sustainability question, does that include the way that people travel to the city? Are you going to be doing any work on that?
Everything. I think recently I went to a presentation on sustainable travel and the travel plan. And even if we could reduce the number of people who come to York by car by 50%, we'd probably take 5,000 cars off the road every day. So we want to look at how we can encourage people to visit York in a more sustainable way as well.
Great, good to hear. But clearly, there's going to be difficulties there if we are looking to regrow the sort of Southeast Asian market, for example. That's going to cause some sustainability issues. I think the other thing that was really great to see, and it was really great to see, is that you clearly have listened to what everybody was saying and engaging with local cultural practitioners. So, sort of our Indigenous culture, there's some great local bands playing Parliament Street this weekend coming, which is brilliant to see. But there is still that tension, isn't there? And this may be something that you address in your market strategy between the use of the space that you need to as a major income generator. So, sort of Christmas activities in the market are your two biggest income generators. How do you see resolving that? Because if we're on the one hand telling you need to be maximising your revenue, on the other hand saying you need to be providing space for buskers, how do you see that getting resolved?
I think what the plan sets out is that there's realism about what we can bring in terms of income by renting out the spaces, but the income that we get, we are able then to do events and pay for local artists to put on events during different parts of the year. One of the key things in the strategy is we'd like to create a York Creates Fund for local artists. So we've got a few ideas about how we might generate some income that creates a fund that then we can commission local artists to perform or create sculptures or do pieces of art or drama throughout the year and future years. So we've got some ideas on how we can set up that York Creates Fund. I don't want to say too much because they're in process at the moment about how we might be able to do that, and then look to other funding, grant funding to match that so we can build the pot even bigger. So I think that's quite exciting so that we can put back into local creatives because they've been hit very hard during COVID.
Great, just a couple more, Chair, if that's all right. Thanks for that, Sarah. In terms of the Good Business Charter that you refer to, is it something that you're going to insist that your members have or something that you encourage them to have?
The Good Business Charter is something that we want to do as a business ourselves and encourage other businesses as well. That's part of the SLA. But I'm a great believer if we're asking other people to, you know, make a good business charter, we should do it ourselves as an organisation. So the priority for this year is for us to be able to sign up to the Good Business Charter.
So could you see a point where that became part of the tendering process even?
We could include that in the tender process. We could ask people to sign up. It is a national scheme. So yes, definitely,
Okay.
it's something we could look at in the future.
Just great, thanks.
We need to get it first though.
Yeah, just a couple more. In terms of the shops, the empty shops that you talk about, trying to fill those shops, is there anything that we could be doing to put pressure on recalcitrant landlords? Because there are some real difficulties with some of the landlords of trying to find alternative use for their empty premises.
There's a whole range of things that you can do to encourage people in terms of pop-up shops. In other places where I've worked, we've used grants to encourage people to take empty spaces, working very closely with the landlords, understanding what their issues are so that you can work together to look at how you can use those spaces as well. We will work closely with the bid, because the bid's got responsibilities as well, and the City Council, to how we can become a bit more creative, look at how we can structure different rent deals for people as well. So a whole range of measures that could be put in place to help encourage empty spaces to be used.
It's great. It's good to hear. Just two more, Chair, and just in terms of working.
You said two more about 3 ago.
Did I?
You definitely did. I'm just going to interrupt for just a second. So we do have as well inside of the city, my understanding from Andrew Waller is that we have the lowest number of vacant properties within the city. So everybody is already doing a good job. It's how we make it even better.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, York is a good example. I know some people focus on the empty properties, but other areas I've worked, York's doing very, very well and has recovered very well. We just need to ensure that we keep that recovery going and not get complacent.
Thanks, Chair. It is just two more. Honestly, it's not a Columbo moment. Just in terms of working with the bid and the sort of the presentation of the city, if you like, is there any scope for making York working with the bid and with the City Council in terms of street cleaning and cleaning all the street furniture? It's getting a bit tatty. You looking at doing any of that work?
We wouldn't do that work. That sits more with the bid and the City Council, but we would support any activity. We can look at how we can maybe improve some of the public realm by using, you know, York creatives to do that, and to use design, some murals, pictures, all sorts of different activities that we could look at doing different schemes to improve the condition of some of the buildings and properties.
Sounds great. And definitely the last question. What's your current staffing numbers?
40, I think.
Okay. Just checking. Sarah, many thanks for that. And I'm really looking forward to what the next year is going to bring, because you've already started to make a major difference in that area. And the way that you're working with the council and the other partners across the city is really empowering. It's good to watch. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the next point is the work plan. Which I had no comments on, because I know, Louise, that you've already divided out the different business plans and financial plans across the piece. So I'm fine to accept that. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's accepted. And I don't have any urgent business. No. Anybody else? No. Many thanks.